The morning sky over Kethvar burned red like blood. Commander Thelanos pressed his six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall and felt the entire colony shake. Another explosion. Another piece of their world dying. He walked slowly to the main window of the command center. Through the thick glass, he could see the terrible sight that had haunted his dreams for months. Black shapes moved across the sky like giant insects. The Vrak-Th bioships hung in the air like living nightmares, their shells covered in moving parts that looked like teeth and claws. 6 months ago, Kethvar had been a peaceful place. The Zelani people had come here to study the strange crystals that grew from the ground like flowers made of light. Scientists worked in clean white buildings. Children played in gardens where the crystals sang soft music when the wind touched them. Families lived in small houses with big windows that let in the golden sunlight. Now everything was broken. Thelanos remembered the first day the Vrak-Th came. His people had been eating their morning meal when the sky turned dark. Ships that looked like giant beetles dropped from space. At first, the Zelani thought they were traders or explorers. They sent messages of welcome. The Vrak-Th answered with weapons. The insect aliens moved like a single mind controlling millions of bodies. They had no names, no faces, no words for peace. They only knew how to consume and destroy. They ate everything, plants, animals, people, even the buildings. Nothing was safe from their hunger. The orbital stations died first. The Zelani watched helplessly as their defensive platforms exploded like tiny stars. Then the communication arrays went silent one by one. Soon, Kethvar could not call for help. They could not even send a simple message to say they were still alive. The colony's defenders fought as best they could. They had mining lasers and construction robots, but these were tools for building, not weapons for war. The Vrak-Th came with living ships that grew new weapons like flowers bloom in spring. When the Zelani shot at them, the holes healed. When they destroyed one creature, 10 more took its place. Now Thelanos stood alone in the command center. Most of his people hid underground in the emergency shelters. The sounds from above were terrible, scratching, clicking, and the awful noise the Vrak-Th made when they fed. It sounded like breaking glass mixed with screaming. He touched the communication panel one more time, even though he knew it was useless. The screen showed only empty static. No ships moved in the space around their world. No rescue was coming. The galaxy's great powers had made their decision about Kethvar. The messages had been clear and cold. The hegemony said they could not spare ships for a minor mining operation. The Trade Federation calculated that saving Kethvar would cost more money than the colony was worth. The Stellar Commonwealth sent official words of sympathy, but no help. Thelanos opened his personal log and began to record what might be his final message. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. This is Commander Thelanos of the Kethvar colony. Today is day 183 of the siege. We have maybe hours left before the Vrak-Th break through our last barriers. He paused and looked out the window again. The bioships were moving closer to the ground. He could see the Vrak-Th warriors dropping from their bellies like seeds from a dying tree. Each one was the size of a ground vehicle, with 4 arms that ended in blade-sharp claws. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light. I want it known that we asked for help. We sent messages to every world, every government, every military force that might hear us. The response was always the same. We are too far away. Too small. Too unimportant. The cost of saving us is too high. In the shelters below, he knew children were crying. Parents held them close and told them lies about rescue ships coming soon. Teachers tried to keep classes going even though the lights kept going out. Doctors treated the wounded even though their supplies were almost gone. The Vrak-Th had a simple way of fighting. They surrounded a world, cut off all escape, and then slowly consumed everything alive. They did not want prisoners or slaves. They wanted food. Living beings provided the energy their bioships needed to grow and multiply. Thelanos had seen the recordings from other worlds that fell to the swarm. The images still made him sick. The Vrak-Th did not kill quickly. They kept their victims alive as long as possible while they fed. The process could take days. If anyone receives this message, please remember us. Remember that the Zelani people of Kethvar tried to build something beautiful here. We studied the singing crystals. We grew gardens in the alien soil. We made this place a home. The building shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the walls, he could hear the sound of metal being torn apart. The Vrak-Th were breaking through the outer defenses. We die because we are alone. Because in this galaxy, the strong ignore the weak and the powerful abandon the helpless. We believed that civilization meant helping each other. We were wrong. Thelanos closed the log and sealed it in the emergency beacon. Maybe someday, someone would find it and know what happened here. The lights went out. In the darkness, he heard the Vrak coming. Captain Minute Kim sat in his chair on the bridge of the Earthship Indomitable and listened to voices that made his blood run cold. The alien words came through the speakers broken and filled with static, but the fear in them was clear. Even without understanding the language, he knew what terror sounded like. The communications officer, a young woman named Hawon, turned from her station with tears in her eyes. She had been listening to these messages for 3 days now as they traveled through space. Captain, the computer has translated more of their words. They are asking for help. They say the Vrak are eating their children. Minute closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped he would never hear that name again. The Vrak. The swarm. The thing that made even the biggest alien empires run away in fear. Lieutenant Daeun Park, his second in command, walked over to his chair. She was a careful woman who always followed the rules. Sir, I must remind you of our orders. The Terran Council was very clear. We are not to get involved in alien wars. Earth is still too weak to make enemies. Minute understood her worry. Humans had only met aliens 30 years ago. Before that, they thought they were alone in the universe. When the first alien ships came to Earth, humans learned they were like babies compared to the great powers of the galaxy. The hegemony had ships the size of cities. The Trade Federation controlled the economy of 100 worlds. The Stellar Commonwealth had weapons that could destroy stars. Earth had nothing but determination and the willingness to fight when others would not. Show me the source of the signals again, Minute said. The main screen lit up with a map of nearby space. A small dot blinked red 16 light-years away. The planet was called Kethvar, home to a people called the Zelani. Minute had never heard of them before, but that did not surprise him. The galaxy was full of small colonies and forgotten worlds that the big powers ignored. What do we know about these Zelani? He asked. Hawon checked her computer. They are peaceful people, sir. Scientists and miners. They have no military and no weapons beyond basic tools. The planet has valuable crystals, but not enough to interest the major powers. Daeun shook her head. Which is exactly why we should not get involved, sir. If the hegemony and the others think this world is not worth saving, what can one human ship do? Minute had seen the classified files about the Vrak. The Earth military had studied every report, every recording, every survivor story they could find. The Vrak were not like other enemies. They did not want to conquer or control. They wanted to consume. They turned entire worlds into feeding grounds, keeping the population alive just long enough to extract every bit of life energy from them. The worst part was how they did it. The Vrak did not kill quickly. They had methods that kept their victims conscious and aware while they slowly drained the life from them. The process could take weeks. The recordings that Earth intelligence had obtained showed horrors that gave grown soldiers nightmares. Sir, said the navigation officer, a man named J. Minute, we are receiving new transmissions. The signals are getting weaker. The alien voices came through the speakers again. Even through the translation, Minute could hear the desperation growing. A father begging someone to save his daughter. A teacher asking for help for her students. A leader saying goodbye to his people. Daeun leaned closer to Minute. Captain, I understand your feelings, but we have orders. If we disobey the council, they could remove you from command. Earth cannot afford to lose experienced officers. Minute thought about Earth and the path his people had taken among the stars. Humans were newcomers, yes. Weak compared to the ancient empires, true. But they had something the others seemed to have lost. When someone called for help, humans answered. It was not always smart. It was not always profitable. But it was who they were. Communications, connect me to Colonel Jinwoo Lee in the Marine Bay, Minute ordered. Daeun's face went pale. Sir, please think about this. I have been thinking about it for 3 days, Lieutenant. The screen showed the face of Colonel Lee, a tough man with scars from a dozen battles. Behind him, Minute could see the Marine Bay where 400 Earth soldiers prepared their weapons and checked their armor. Colonel, have your men heard the distress calls? Lee nodded grimly. Yes, sir. The whole ship has been listening. My Marines are asking when we leave for Kethvar. And what did you tell them? I told them to get ready for a fight. Daeun stepped forward. Captain Kim, I must formally object to this course of action. We have direct orders to avoid alien conflicts. This could start a war Earth cannot win. Minute stood up from his chair and walked to the main screen. The red dot that marked Kethvar blinked like a dying heartbeat. Somewhere around that distant star, people who had never done anything wrong were being hunted by monsters. The great powers of the galaxy had decided these people were not worth saving. But Earth had not been asked. Earth had not been given the chance to decide. "Helmsman," Minute said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "Set course for Kethvar. Maximum speed." "Sir, yes sir." As the ship turned toward the distant world, Minute thought about the choice he was making. He might be ending his career. He might be starting a war. But he knew one thing for certain. When someone called for help, humans answered. The Vrak hive mind had consumed 4 to 7 worlds. It knew the taste of fear from 1,000 different species. It understood how civilized armies fought with their careful rules and clean energy weapons. But when the human ship appeared in the sky above Kethvar, the swarm encountered something it had never faced before. The Earth ship Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace like a falling star. It was smaller than the Vrak bioships, built from metal and composites instead of living flesh. The swarm's collective intelligence barely registered it as a threat. When small pods began launching from the human vessel, the hive mind classified them as escape craft or debris. That mistake lasted exactly 37 seconds. Master Sergeant Sung-Minute Choi felt his drop pod slam through the atmosphere at speeds that would kill an unprotected human. Inside his powered armor, he watched the tactical display paint targets across his vision. Red dots marked Vrak positions. Blue showed friendly forces. The computer in his helmet calculated firing solutions faster than his eyes could track. Around him, 40 other pods fell like meteors toward the surface. Each one carried a human marine ready to fight. Sung-Minute had been a soldier for 15 years, but he had never seen an enemy like the Vrak. The intelligence reports described creatures that moved like one mind controlling millions of bodies. They felt no fear, showed no mercy, and never retreated. Perfect. Sung-Minute preferred enemies that did not run away. His pod hit the ground with a crash that shook the earth. The sides exploded outward, and he rolled into combat position with his rifle ready. The landscape around him looked like a nightmare. The ground was covered in a black substance that moved and pulsed like living skin. Strange growths that might once have been trees now writhed with tentacles. The air smelled of decay and acid. And everywhere, there were Vrak. The creatures came at him from 3 directions at once. Each one was the size of a small vehicle, with 4 arms ending in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. Their eyes glowed red in faces that looked like insects mixed with machines. They moved fast, faster than anything that size should be able to move. Sung-Minute smiled inside his helmet and opened fire. His rifle spat out metal slugs at supersonic speed. The first Vrak took 3 rounds to the center mass and staggered backward, green blood spraying from the wounds. But it did not fall. Instead, the holes began to close as the creature's body repaired itself. "Interesting," Sung-Minute muttered. He switched his rifle to explosive rounds and put the next shot directly into the thing's head. This time it stayed down. All around the landing zone, other Marines were discovering the same thing. The Vrak were tough, but they could be killed if you hit them hard enough in the right places. Corporal GA-1 took cover behind a ruined building and called out targets to her squad. "Movement at 2 o'clock. Big ones coming in fast." Her pulse rifle sent coherent energy beams into a group of warrior forms that charged across the open ground. Unlike the older kinetic weapons her sergeant preferred, her energy rifle could punch through Vrak armor with each shot. The human tactics confused the swarm's collective mind. Most civilized species fought at long range with clean energy weapons. They formed neat lines and fired in organized volleys. They followed rules about protecting civilians and avoiding damage to infrastructure. Humans did none of these things. They moved in small groups that supported each other but operated independently. When one Marine was threatened, others would risk their own lives to help. They used weapons that the galaxy considered primitive: bullets instead of energy beams, explosives instead of clean disintegrators. Worst of all, they fought with an emotional intensity that seemed to make them stronger and faster. The Vrak had never encountered a species that turned fear and anger into weapons. Private Kyung-ho Park found himself surrounded by 3 Vrak warriors in what had once been a beautiful garden. His rifle was empty, and there was no time to reload. Instead of retreating or surrendering like any rational being would do, he pulled out a combat knife and charged the nearest creature. The Vrak collective intelligence could not process this behavior. A small human attacking something 3 times his size with a blade made no tactical sense. The distraction lasted just long enough for Kyung-ho to plant an explosive charge on the creature's back and dive for cover. In the colony's command center, Commander Thelanos watched the impossible battle unfold through the security cameras. For 6 months, his people had hidden underground while the Vrak slowly destroyed everything above. The few times Zalani defenders had tried to fight, they had been overwhelmed in minutes. But these humans were different. They fought like predators that had evolved for war. Every movement was precise and deadly. They coordinated their attacks without seeming to communicate. And they never, ever stopped advancing. "Who are they?" whispered his aide, a young Zalani named Veltar. The answer came when a human warrior kicked down their barricaded door. Thelanos raised his hands, expecting to die. Instead, the armored figure lowered his weapon when he saw they were civilians. The human's voice came through his helmet speakers, translated into Zalani by some advanced computer. "Earth Defense Force, Marines. We're here to help." Thelanos stared at the human in disbelief. "Earth? But Earth is, your people are newcomers. You have no reason to help us." The Marine, whose name tag read Corporal Deho, checked his rifle and looked back toward the battle raging outside. "You called for help. That's reason enough." Through the broken windows, Thelanos could see more humans advancing through the Vrak positions. The creatures that had terrorized his world for months were falling back for the first time. The impossible was happening. Someone had come to save them. Captain Minute Ho Kim's emergency message spread across space like wildfire. Within hours of his broadcast, every human ship within range began changing course toward Kethvar. The message was simple: civilians under attack by Vrak. Need immediate assistance. The response surprised even Minute Ho. The cargo ship Soul Express was the first to arrive. Captain Sejin Yoon commanded a crew of 30 merchant marines who had been hauling mining equipment to the outer colonies. Her ship had no military weapons, but her crew had welding torches, construction mechs, and 20 years of experience in dangerous space. "We're not soldiers," she told Minute Ho over the communication link. "But we can fight." Next came the corporate security vessel Guardian carrying 100 armed guards who normally protected trade convoys from pirates. Then the patrol ship Buzan arrived with 50 police officers who had been investigating smuggling operations. Even the notorious pirate Captain Yongsu Han showed up with his crew, claiming that killing Vrak was better business than robbing merchants. By the end of the first day, 12 human ships orbited Kethvar. It was the largest gathering of Earth forces ever assembled outside human space. On the ground, the battle had become something the galaxy had never seen before. The Vrak collective intelligence struggled to understand how humans fought. Most species followed predictable patterns. They protected valuable resources, retreated when losses became too high, and made logical decisions based on military doctrine. Humans did none of these things. Colonel Jinwoo Lee coordinated the ground assault from a captured Vrak structure that his engineers had turned into a command post. The reports coming in from his units made no tactical sense, but they were winning. "Sir," reported Captain Eun-ji Shin over the radio. "Alpha Company has secured the Eastern Crystal Fields. We found civilians hiding in the mines. They've been there for months." "Roger that. Send them to the medical center." "Already done, sir. My medic is with them now." This was the pattern that confused the Vrak most. Human units would abandon strategic positions to rescue a single civilian. They would risk entire squads to save wounded enemies. They fought as if every life mattered more than victory itself. Lieutenant Haijin Nam crouched behind a pile of rubble next to Commander Thelanos, reloading her pulse rifle as Vrak warriors charged their position. The Zalani leader still seemed stunned that anyone had come to help his people. "I do not understand," he said, firing his borrowed human weapon at the approaching creatures. "Your species traveled across space to fight for strangers. Why?" Haijin checked her ammo counter and peered around the corner. 3 more Vrak were advancing toward the medical center where dozens of wounded Zalani were being treated. "You called for help," she said, taking careful aim. "That's enough." She squeezed the trigger, and the lead Vrak stumbled as the energy beam punched through its armor. Her second shot dropped it completely. Thelanos shook his head in amazement. "The great powers of the galaxy declared us not worth saving. But you came anyway." "The great powers aren't human," Haijin replied, switching positions as return fire burned the air where she had been hiding. The turning point came on the 3rd day when Sergeant Boram Kang's squad was advancing through what had been the colony's residential district. The buildings were mostly destroyed, covered in the black organic growth the Vrak used to remake conquered territory. But Kang's motion sensors detected something underneath one of the larger structures. "Movement below," reported Corporal In Ho Jorn. Multiple contacts, but they're not moving like VRAC-TH. Kang ordered his squad to investigate. What they found changed everything. Hidden beneath the ruined building was a VRAC-TH feeding facility. Rows of organic pods lined the walls, each one containing a living Zelani. The creatures were kept barely conscious while the VRAC-TH slowly drained their life energy. Men, women, children, dozens of them trapped in a living nightmare. "Command, this is Sergeant Kang," he reported, his voice tight with anger. "We found civilians. They're alive, but barely. We need immediate medical support and extraction." The tactical doctrine was clear. With limited forces, the smart move was to mark the location and return with a larger force after securing the primary objectives. Kang looked at the pods containing children who couldn't be more than 6 years old. "Forget doctrine," he said to his squad. "We're getting them out now." His emergency call went out to every human unit on the planet. Within minutes, Marines were abandoning their assigned positions to converge on Kang's location. Medics came running with portable medical equipment. Engineers brought cutting tools to free the prisoners. From his command post, Colonel Lee watched his entire battle plan collapse as his forces focused on the rescue operation. Any military academy would call it a disaster. The VRAC-TH could use the confusion to counterattack and possibly win the battle. Instead, something unprecedented happened. Captain Minute-Ho watched from the bridge of the Indomitable Asterisk as his Marines threw themselves into the rescue with complete disregard for their own safety. Human soldiers who had been fighting each other for position just hours before now worked together to save alien civilians they had never met. "Sir," Lieutenant Daeun reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "We're receiving communications from the VRAC-TH bioships." "What kind of communications?" "Surrender transmissions, sir. They're requesting permission to withdraw." Minute-Ho stared at the tactical display. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the VRAC-TH swarm was retreating. Not because they were defeated, but because they could not understand an enemy that valued other lives more than victory. The collective intelligence that had consumed 4 to 7 worlds had encountered something it could not process. An enemy that grew stronger when protecting others, that fought harder when saving lives than when taking them. The swarm fled into deep space, leaving HFY free. And across the galaxy, word began to spread about the humans who answered distress calls. 6 weeks had passed since the last VRAC-TH bioship disappeared into the darkness between stars. On HFY, the morning sun shone on a world that was being reborn. Where black organic growths had once covered the ground, new gardens grew. Where broken buildings had stood like broken teeth, construction crews worked alongside both human Marines and Zelani engineers to build something better. Captain Minute-Ho Kim stood in the new command center and watched the flood of messages coming in from across the galaxy. The communication board lit up like a festival display, each light representing a world, a colony, a group of people who had heard what happened at HFY. "Captain," said Communications Officer Hawan, her voice filled with wonder. "We have 4 to 7 new distress calls today. Small colonies asking for protection. Mining stations requesting defense agreements. Even some worlds under hegemony control are asking if we can help them." Minute-Ho shook his head in amazement. Before HFY, Earth had been ignored by the galaxy's great powers. The hegemony treated humans like children playing with dangerous toys. The Trade Federation saw them as useful servants who could do jobs too dirty for civilized species. The Stellar Commonwealth barely acknowledged that Earth existed. Now everything had changed. Lieutenant Daeun Park walked over with a datapad full of official communications. Her expression was complex, part pride, part worry. "Sir, the diplomatic messages are getting interesting. The hegemony is offering us full membership status with voting rights in their council. The Trade Federation wants exclusive contracts for human military services. Even the Commonwealth is suggesting a mutual defense pact." "What are they offering in return?" Minute-Ho asked. "Territory, technology, trade privileges. The hegemony is even offering to share their advanced ship designs." Daeun paused. "Sir, these are opportunities that Earth has wanted for 30 years. We could become a major power overnight." Minute-Ho looked out the window at a group of human Marines teaching Zelani children how to play soccer in the rebuilt plaza. The children laughed as they chased the ball, their voices mixing with the deeper laughter of the soldiers. 6 weeks ago, those same children had been hiding in underground shelters, too afraid to make a sound. "And what do they want us to do in exchange for all these wonderful gifts?" he asked. Daeun's face darkened. "The usual. Fight their wars. Protect their interests. Follow their orders." She looked at the datapad again. The hegemony specifically mentions that human military forces would be excellent for maintaining order in difficult territories. Minute-Ho understood. The galaxy's powers had noticed that humans fought differently. They had seen what happened when human soldiers were protecting something they cared about. Now they wanted to use that strength for their own purposes. Commander Thelanos entered the command center, wearing the new insignia that marked him as Joint Commander of Kethvar's defense force. In the weeks since the battle, he had worked closely with the human marines to design a new kind of military unit, one that combines Zilani knowledge of local space with human combat experience. "Captain Kim," he said, "the new beacon array is ready for activation." Minute-Ho nodded and followed Thelanos to the communication station. The beacon was a powerful transmitter that could send messages across hundreds of light-years of space. But more than that, it was a symbol of something new in the galaxy. "Are you ready?" Thelanos asked, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Minute-Ho thought about the choice they were making. The safe path would be to accept one of the offers from the major powers. Earth could become wealthy and powerful by serving the interests of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But that would also mean becoming like them. It would mean calculating the worth of lives in terms of profit and strategic value. It would mean abandoning people who called for help because saving them was not cost-effective. "Activate the beacon," Minute-Ho said. The array powered up with a low hum that could be felt through the floor. Across the galaxy, the message began broadcasting in over 100 different languages. "To any world under threat, to any people who believe you are forgotten, call Earth. Someone will come." The words were simple, but their meaning spread like ripples in a pond. On distant worlds, beings who had given up hope began to listen to their communication systems again. In forgotten colonies, leaders who had accepted abandonment started to believe in rescue. On oppressed worlds, resistance groups began planning for a future where help might actually arrive. Colonel Jinwoo Lee stood at the memorial they had built for the Marines who died in the battle for Kethvar. 12 names were carved into the black stone, along with the words "They answered the call." The memorial sat in the center of a garden where Zilani crystal flowers grew alongside earth roses, creating something beautiful that had never existed before. Master Sergeant Sungminute Choi approached and saluted sharply. His armor bore new scars from the battle, but his eyes held the satisfaction of a job well done. "New orders from Earth Command, sir," Sungminute reported. "The 47th Expeditionary is being expanded to full division strength. Seems every young human in the Confederation wants to be a Marine now." Lee was not surprised. The story of Kethvar had reached Earth and spread through every human colony. Young people who had grown up hearing about the great alien civilizations now saw a different path. They wanted to be part of something that fought for others instead of serving the interests of the powerful. "How many recruits?" Lee asked. 50,000 applications in the last month, sir. And it's not just humans. We're getting volunteers from a dozen different species, people who heard what we did here and want to join. Lee looked up at the sky where human ships now patrolled alongside Zilani vessels. The age of humanity's quiet expansion was over. The age of Earth's warriors had begun. And across the galaxy, the forgotten and abandoned were no longer alone.